These are my thoughts and remembrances on a trip that we made, Tom Tatum, Cody Fishburne, Bill Vaughn, and myself, after we finished summer clinic after our junior year at MCV in Richmond. Summer clinic was over early in August, and we headed out one night, driving all night, rotating on the car who drove. And the first night, we were going to try to get to Saratoga Springs, New York, where we wanted to go to the races. And I don't remember who was driving, but I do remember when we pulled up at a toll booth off the Jersey Turnpike, or certainly New York Thruway, somewhere in there, and we were asking how we got to Saratoga Springs. And detecting our southern accent, he says, "Listen, you southern bozos, this ain't the Peach State." So the southern accent did not serve us very well. In any event, we went to the racetrack. It was a very pleasant day. And then we headed on heading north to Canada. I don't remember whether we went to Canada the next day, but I do remember that we ended up in Quebec City, and we stayed at a rooming house, and the lady that let us stay there thought that Tom Tatum's name sounded like a song, and she called him Tom to Tom, Tom to Tom. In any event, what I remember about Quebec City, the highlight of that, was going to the Citadel there where they had the changing of the guard. Now, I've been to the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace, but the changing of the guard at Quebec City was far more impressive than the one in Buckingham Palace, and to me, one of the real highlights of the trip. And when we headed back out of Canada, we went up to Three Rivers, and all of a sudden we found the traffic was all backed up. And the reason it was backed up, they were having the Trans-Canadian bike race, and we got all involved in that. But anyway, we got to Three Rivers, and Cody met a young lady named Therese Lautrec or something like that, which he corresponded with for years after that. I can't remember exactly what her name was, but it was something like that. Maybe Shirley Fishburne can remember that because Cody may have mentioned that. So one of the things I remembered about that, as we were riding along there, we were following the St. Lawrence Seaway, and we would see a wheat field, and you'd look out in the wheat field and you'd see an ocean liner or a tanker or something, which was coming up the St. Lawrence Seaway. But we couldn't see the water, we could just see the ship, and it looked like the ship was inland on that, so I do remember that. So anyway, we came back down into Maine and came down, I think it was Camden, Maine, and we decided to have, we'd been living on a shoestring. We'd go to the grocery store and buy a loaf of bread and some bologna and cheese, and we would have that for lunch. And we decided to splurge in Camden, Maine, I believe it was, and we went to a restaurant where they served, the big lobster dinner. And if memory serves me right, now this was 1962, I believe a complete lobster dinner was like $7.95. But the mistake that I made, and I think perhaps the other three made as well, is they served us steamed clams on like a pizza platter, and it was an all-you-could-eat type thing. And so we ate buttered clams before our lobster came, and of course that had butter on it. And the thing I remembered, I had such tremendous indigestion that night, but I certainly wasn't going to lose it because I'd paid $7.95 for that dinner. And I can't remember, but I think the name of the beer that we drank was Narragansett beer. So anyway, we left there and headed on down from Maine and into Massachusetts and went to Hyannisport. And it happened to be on a weekend when the President Kennedy was there. And we went to the gate and inquiring what was going on. And certainly this would not happen with security now in 2020. But the guards started asking us who we were. We told him we were dental students from Richmond, Virginia. And he asked us if we'd like to come inside and would we help them out. Well, certainly we responded that we could. So we went inside, and what they wanted us to do, there was one of the Kennedy clan, a young lady who was handicapped, I think she had cerebral palsy, and she was on the party boat. I think the name of that was the Victoria. And they were concerned that she might slip and fall off and fall into, the bay there. So anyway, we stayed on that, and they had a sailing race there. I don't remember actually seeing President Kennedy. I just remember seeing the boats there. And so that was one of the real highlights. And where we stayed there, we went to this rooming house, and we had sort of a garage apartment that had 4 beds in it. And I remember quite well, the lady said that she would give us $2 off each of the room if we would strip the room and bring the sheets down, which we were certainly willing to do, because that was before we had Visa and American Express and all of that. And all I had was a Texaco credit card of my father's, which I paid for my share of the gas. And I think the whole trip ended up costing me like $142. Certainly something we could not do in this day and age. So the incident at Hyannis Port brings back a memory, because it was a young lady, Paula Lawrenson, who was a girlfriend of George DeLoe, who as an intern was writing for the Richmond paper. I think it was the evening paper. I can't remember whether it was the Times-Dispatch. But in any event, she wrote an article on us, and the picture that I'm sending you was a picture that was taken from that article. And if Shirley has that, or Bill Vaughn has that in their files, I certainly would like to have a copy of that. So after we left Hyannisport, the trip was basically over, and so without hesitating, we headed back to Richmond, and we came into New York City and stayed at a Fleabag hotel there. And I remember going to Birdland, where they played the jazz and all like that, and then on into Washington, D.C., and then into Richmond, and the trip was over. And like I say, some of the highlights of the trip, as I've mentioned, were the Citadel in Quebec City, certainly eating at the lobster place in Camden, Maine, and also the Kennedy compound. So if Shirley or Bill happens to have that article, I certainly would like to have it, and I'm sending each of you a copy of this video to look at. And if Cody shared things with you, Shirley, about this, or he's got some files on it or so forth, please get in touch with me, and I'll refine this tape. Bill, the same thing true with you, because you were actually there, and you probably have some very vivid memories, whereas my memories, some of them, as you can see, are quite clear, but others of them are a little on the fuzzy. So hopefully we can refine this and make a video on this, which your grandchildren may find interesting in learning something about their grandparents. So enjoy and let me know. And if you have information on this and want to give me a call, don't hesitate to call me, 901-409-9969.